Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are now watching Real Talk with Ronnie. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again. This is Real Talk with Ronnie. My name is Ronald Lynn, and I'm once again here with Frank Pallotta. Frank, thanks for coming back on our show. It's been a wild ride, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I believe the last time that we spoke was back in the end of October, right?
It was the end of October of last year.
So it's almost been like 3 months.
Yep.
So, Frank, what have you been up to these past 3 months?
Well, the first section of the past 3 months
Right.
was rolling into the tail end of the campaign. Obviously, as you
Right.
know, the entire campaign was pretty challenging with all the health and economic issues going on in the state. But we forged ahead. The team forged ahead. Right. I think we had some pretty good results across the district. We got to meet a lot of people. We got to get our message out. The end result didn't turn out exactly how we wanted it, but that was the first chunk of the last 3 months. And then, like anything in business, with a success or a failure, you deconstruct that success or failure to see what you could have done better or what you could have done differently. And then, I've spent some time with family. When you're away from the family effectively for almost 2 years, you almost have to introduce yourself to the family again. Went through the holidays, and now we're trying to get out there and make sure that the party knows that we're here to stay,
Right.
And the state knows that we're here to stay.
Okay. So I believe last time when we spoke, I asked you, okay, so win or lose, what are you going to do the day after the election day? And I believe you said sleep. Right?
I did.
Did you get enough sleep?
That night I got some sleep,
okay.
but I got back to,
Right.
3 or 4 hours of sleep a night.
Did you go on vacation during this time or anything?
No, know what, I didn't. We rolled right into the holidays. Both of my sons live in Baltimore and Washington, so they came home for the holidays. Wow. And, holidays we rolled from Thanksgiving into Christmas.
Right.
But no, I didn't take time. I will.
Okay.
I will take some time.
Any vacation destination spots that you're eyeing?
Oh, you know what? I like warm.
Okay.
Our
Florida,
family likes.
Maybe, right? You can go to Palm Beach and hang out with the president.
I think he's got some available time now.
Right,
but it's like
after.
It's a little pricey for me, but
you could do it. You could do it. Okay, so I read in the news that you actually pretty much conceded on November 30th, right? Or that's when you kind of called Josh and let him know that the race is over, right?
Yeah, congratulated him for
now.
For the race.
Why did you wait until the 30th as opposed to the 4th or?
Well, look, you want to wait for all the votes to be counted. As I said in my concession, it would be impractical. It wouldn't be right for me to concede until everybody's votes were counted. The reason I didn't concede was not that I thought the election would have been different, but I just found it to be inconsiderate to come out and say something.
Yeah.
As you know, it took a long time to count all the votes, not just the mail-in ballots, but the drop box ballots, and then going through with all the provisionals.
Too,
exactly. So I should be the last person to come out and say, "Hey, this thing is over."
I read somewhere that you said, everybody else should be heard first, and I should be heard last, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's really cool. That's respectful for all the voters,
Thank you.
right? So on election night, I was actually at your election night watch party, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I believe the numbers at the end of the night were that you were down by 17 points, right?
Right.
But then when all the votes came in, you were actually down by only 7.6%.
Yep.
So it was actually a lot closer.
Sure.
And with all the mail-in ballots and shenanigans that might have happened, perhaps you were even closer. Perhaps you might have won, right? So
I'll leave that to the statisticians.
Right.
But I obviously accepted the defeat, and we'll try and do better.
So looking back, now that you've had 3 months to kind of dissect and do a postmortem, is there anything different that you would have done in this campaign, or and anything you would have done more or done less? What do you think?
Well, I would have gone back a couple of years to that Wuhan factory in China where they were manufacturing the virus.
Yeah.
Maybe took a few things, knocked a few vials off the table to make sure it didn't get out.
If you could time travel, then we could solve a lot of problems, right?
True.
Right.
Yes and no. I mean, the one thing I learned very early in the race from my campaign manager is it's about the voters. It's always about the voters. And unfortunately, with what was going on, we weren't able to get out and see as many people as we could have that we could have seen.
I think this virus kind of like handicapped everybody.
It did. Look, there's handicaps in every race on both sides,
but especially this year.
This year was off the charts as far as
when you're trying to run a retail politics game, but you can't do the retailing.
Right,
it's kind of hard, right?
No, you're right. So if you say would I would have done anything different, I don't know if we could have done anything different. Our hands were tied from an outreach standpoint.
Right.
But I'm happy with the progress our team made. Not so much with the outcome, but you go back to the drawing board and you kind of figure out if someone reaches out to you and if they're going to run in 2 years, if I'm going to run in 2 years, you say what would you have done different? And every campaign, every business, every opportunity is better when you look back to see what you could have done better. Right. So that's what we plan to do.
I think they say hindsight is always 20/20, right?
Yeah.
So. But in 2 years, I mean, I'm pretty sure I hope this virus will be gone in 2 years. If it's still here, then I guess we're all screwed.
Yeah, true. Yeah, we have bigger problems if it's still around. If it's still an issue.
So let's go back to election night. So let me give you a rundown on how I was living that night, right? So I was watching the live returns, and I know that your election night party went until like 11 or 12, right?
Sure.
So I was at home. I was watching the results come in, and by all accounts, everything was looking great. Like I left my house at around like 10 p.m. I was like, okay, Donald Trump's gonna win, right? He's up in Michigan, he's up in Pennsylvania, he's up in Wisconsin, up in Ohio, up in Florida. So I told my mom, like, all right, it's all good. I'm gonna go to Frank's party, right? So I came to your party, and while I was there, it was Ohio and Florida was finally called for Trump, right? So I was like, okay, cool. This is in the bag. And I saw you and I, said hi to you. And then I went home. And that's when everything kind of like changed.
Sure.
I think around midnight or 12:30, Biden came out and gave his little speech, which I thought was kind of like a, concession type of speech, right? But then the results just kind of stopped.
Yeah. They stopped counting in a number of states.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, when you went home, did you continue watching or did you just go to sleep?
No, I watched it for a while. I mean, it happens once every 4 years.
Right,
4 years prior, I watched the whole thing. It was a little bit different movie then because you saw it was moving. Right. This was a different setup where all of a sudden, there was a 180 at the results that were coming in. I was watching
till like 3, 4 in the morning. I mean,
I wasn't that bold.
Okay. So I went to bed then, and then when I woke up, I was like, "Whoa, what is going on?"
Yeah.
Like Michigan, Wisconsin have flipped.
Right.
And Pennsylvania was kind of trending towards Biden too.
Right.
So I think a lot of Trump voters went to bed that night happy.
Sure.
And then woke up and was like kind of shocked, right?
A bit stunned, right?
Yeah. So that was very, very weird.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that people point to. The problem is, you could explain some of the movement.
Right.
Statisticians have come out, people that have no bend one way or another, and have come out and said the statistical anomalies for all 5 states slipping in the manner that they did was pretty out there.
Right.
Again, above my pay grade, above my math grade.
Yeah.
But you have to admit that we've not seen that happen.
Ever.
Yeah.
And for all the Democratic outcry, like when Republicans say, there was voter fraud, blah blah blah, and they say there's no proof, but there actually has been a lot of proof, and actually has been a lot of evidence. But the problem is the courts won't hear it, and they won't hear it not because it's on the merits, but because it's based on technicality.
Right. Didn't have standing.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's very frustrating, and so that's just my 2 cents. But I relate this to okay. So let's pretend that I had a one-on-one basketball game with Michael Jordan, right? It was a game that no one watched. It was closed, right? And at the end, I come out and I say, I actually beat Jordan by 10 points, right? And people will say, well, there's no evidence. I'm like, well, it's true. And it's like we all just kind of have to take my word for it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how this election was, right? Because like Trump, I mean, he has massive support in all the states, in all the swing states.
Right.
I mean, if you look at his rallies, they're overflowing.
Yeah.
And Biden has like rallies that have like 10 people at most.
Right.
So I think it's very hard for Republicans to reconcile. Like, okay, so we're forced to swallow that Biden beat him by like 7 million votes.
Right.
So I think the outrage and the questions that linger is legit. What do you think?
Well, if anyone has a question, questions are always legitimate.
Right.
You know, it becomes a question of where you do your homework and you come back and there's both, you know, scientific and practical evidence that prove one way or another. That's really where the rubber meets the road. Again, you had the Trump team, and I don't know if they were the Trump team technically. They were the team looking at results that were looking at the Republican Party. And they were coming out with, a series of, again, we talked about statistical anomalies and other what they said were violations of state rules where you have to stop counting at a certain time.
Right.
So, you have that together with a number of conspiracy theories we really couldn't find. And, I think that's where you cross the road between confusion and anger and some legitimate – look, what I saw in Pennsylvania, to your point, was Trump was pretty far ahead.
Right, yeah.
But what wasn't counted were a lot of the senators' mail-in ballots, which we know that Dems mail in at a greater level. Also, what wasn't counted were some of the larger cities, which typically lean Democrat.
Yeah.
So when I looked at that before I went to bed, I knew the gap was going to come in. I honestly didn't think it would come in as much as it did, but I knew the gap would come in. Just like in our, in our race, where Eastern Bergen County is going to come in, where Central Bergen County, where Sussex and Warren and Passaic are going to come in. So when you see the results, initially, you ask, where have they come from? And from that point, you can say, okay, look, we knew, as you said, when we were down 17 points on election night, I knew it would get closer. Right. Why did I know that? For 2 or 3 reasons. First, we know Republicans will vote in a different manner than Democrats vote. Democrats tend to do a lot of mail-in votes. We also know that the drop box was used predominantly. And the drop box votes were counted in chronological order by when they were received.
Right.
And on election night, what we know is they stopped counting the ballots on election night from the prior Wednesday or Thursday's delivery.
Okay.
So we needed Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday to come in, and we know Republicans vote later than Democrats. Right. So we knew the gap would come in. I honestly didn't think the gap would come in inside of 10 points. And then to your point, when it came in at just around 7 points, we got calls from D.C. congratulating us for a great race. Oh, yeah.
So you got a call from Kevin McCarthy?
We got a call from D.C.
Okay, from D.C., not necessarily him.
But they were very happy with the results. Yeah. They liked how we ran our race for a lot of different reasons. They knew, to your point, we were handicapped as far as vote by mail, which was worth a number of points. We knew the pandemic and any crisis or chaos surrounding any sort of an election is going to cause a skew one way or another depending on what that crisis is.
Let me ask you, do you think it would make a difference if Republicans also told their voters to also vote by mail? Would it have helped or not really? What do you think?
You know what?
Because it kind of seems like, by telling our voters to go to the polls, we're kind of ceding that whole vote, the vote by mail.
Look, we have to get used to vote by mail. That's where the country is going. We have to get used to multiple dates, voting over a number of days. We're a larger country now. We have the technology to actually do this a lot easier than it's getting done.
I don't know why we don't do it like on the internet. I mean, we pay for stuff online, right? We do so many things. But I think maybe if we vote online, it might open it up to like a lot more fraud, right?
Yeah, I think you want to see as many faces as possible. You want to have some evidence that when someone's handing it in. Look, I think the first thing you need to do is clean up the voter rolls.
Right.
But to answer your question about if Republicans were told, Democrats outnumber Republicans in my district at a rate of 1.3 to 1.
Okay.
So just out of the gate, if everybody votes, the Republicans are going to lose versus the Democrats. The independents comprise about 41% of the voters.
Okay.
Independents make
How
their
did the
decisions.
independents break this time?
Independents appeared to have broken left this time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's just the math, you know,
Right,
because independent, you can look over in 2016, independents broke right.
Right.
Previously, and one of the reasons the district, even though there's a Democrat congressman, it's a Republican district.
Right, yeah. It's been a Republican district since, I think, 1933.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
As far as the congressman, yeah. But even in normal elections, right now it's still a Republican district, even though we have a Democrat mayor, a Democrat governor, and we have a Democrat congressman.
What was the race breakdown in 2020 for this same race? Do you remember?
What do you mean the race breakdown?
Like, I'm sorry, in 2018 when John McCain ran against Gottheimer?
Oh, he ran against
Right.
John. John lost by 14 points to
14
Josh.
points, right. So,
back
you
then.
cut that deficit by half
Yeah.
during a pandemic. So
Yeah.
I think that's a huge feat, right?
Well, look,
And it's all thanks to your campaign manager.
it's and look, it goes back to I've spent my career in
Right.
sales, and Kelly has spent her career running campaigns.
Right.
And I think the marriage of understanding that in my world it's about the customer, in Kelly's world it's about the voter. It's exactly the same.
It's the dream team, right?
I don't know if she would say that.
Kelly, yes, no? Yeah, okay. All right.
We had a great team. I think we were handicapped with the environment.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so I think in all fairness, to get where you got, that's a huge feat. And,
Thank you.
That's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, nearly 200,000 people said you're the guy, and that's
Right.
impressive.
Like, just imagine if there was no pandemic. It would have been, like a Pallotta, wipeout. Right?
Yeah, look, it could have been. I got to tell you.
I honestly think that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a presidential year, right? You had a great campaign. You were a great candidate. You had a great team. There's no reason why you should have lost, if not for this pandemic, if not for the handicapping.
Yeah,
Really.
I think so. That's certainly what I'd like to think. And at a minimum, I think it would have been a horse race.
Right.
So appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm just speaking the truth. Right? Okay. So after the race, did you have any communication with Josh Gottheimer or?
Sure. I reached out to him on the 30th or at the end of the month. I don't remember, and congratulated him.
Okay.
Left a message.
Okay.
He's
Did
a
he call
busy
back?
guy. He did call back.
Oh, okay, great.
And we had a good conversation. It was gracious.
Right.
I think, sporting event, a race, whatever you do. At the end of the day, once you're comfortable with the outcome, again, we talk about it all being about the voters. Josh has a job now, as Biden and Harris have a job now.
Right.
You govern and you legislate for all the people. If you don't, it's up to them to do their homework to see if they're doing their job, and it would be up to the next candidate to remind the voters they didn't deliver what was promised.
Right.
So that's what you have to do.
Politics, right?
Sure.
So I know that this year in Jersey, there's a governor's race.
Yes.
It's actually one of the two states in the country that have a race this year, Jersey and
Virginia.
Yep. So that means we're going to be in the spotlight, right?
Yeah.
So right now, for the governor's race, it looks like it's going to be Jack
Ciattarelli,
right?
sure.
Because Doug Steinhardt, he dropped out,
Yep.
a few weeks ago, and that was actually very surprising to some people. But I saw that kind of coming.
Did you?
Because when this whole melee with the Capitol storming happened,
Right.
and the fact that Steinhardt kind of he aligned himself with Trump.
He did.
So I think that maybe his campaign thought that, all right, I'm a Trump guy, and now Trump is getting all this, bad press, and everyone's kind of, they're distancing. So there's no way that I can get the nomination. So let me just quit now.
Yeah.
Do you think what he did was smart, or do you think he's going to come back and kind of be like, oh, I actually quit a little bit too early?
No, look.
Because I think the love for Trump is still there. It's never
I
going to
agree
go
with
away,
that.
right?
I think, and look, I haven't talked to Doug. I talked to Doug a little bit
Right.
after my election. We spoke a little bit when he entered the race. I wished him luck,
Right.
Because the winner will be the party if we get the right
yeah.
candidate. But I think ultimately Doug made the decision that he thought was best for his family, his business, and the party.
Right.
And that's the one thing you talked about New Jersey politics. The Democrats have done a pretty good job at making sure that they crown their leader early,
Right.
so that it's a good long race with that single body, where Republicans tend to, and this is not right or wrong.
Protracted, primary, right? Which kind of hurts everybody.
Well, and look, primaries I think are healthy. I
Right.
think they create a vetting process. But I think Doug looked, read the tea leaves, and said, I think his announcement was he had other situations he had to deal with.
Right,
Maybe
like
it was
his
work
family
or something.
Work. Yeah.
But I think ultimately he loves the party. I think he made a decision that if he thought somewhere down the road, you know what, I may not have the opportunity because of what you said to win this primary. It's better for me, as they say, discretion is the better part of valor.
Right.
Let me take a step back now, get behind Jack, let the party get behind Jack. Obviously, there's still, a couple of people in the race. I've heard a few more people want to step in, but Jack was out on the campaign trail when I was out on mine. And I remember turning to my campaign manager saying, isn't the governor's race in 2021?
Right.
And I was running for a 20 race.
Right.
And she said, yeah. So I was very impressed that Jack was out there as early as he was.
Jack has been out there for many years. I mean, the first time that I met him was in 2017. It was at the BCRO convention, and he had just come in second to Kim, and he was very gracious in his speech. And he said, this won't be the last time that I'm here, right? You will hear from me again.
Yeah,
and
he wasn't kidding.
Yeah, and he was true to his word, right? I mean, ever since that last campaign, he's pretty much been out on the trail,
right?
So I think he deserves this, nomination, and he deserves the, governor's seat because he's been working very, very hard.
He has, but another thing, look, they're irrespective of how long you're out there, and I do think that's the key factor when people see you out there.
And also, he has the, the qualifications.
That's exactly right.
Right.
He brings up the right things at the right time that people recognize. I think our governor. Our current governor has done a terrible job at managing the crisis.
Right.
Terrible. He's not transparent. He's not truthful. And for someone who's actually been in a private sector job for as long as he was in, to not have even the most minute level of crisis management skills and accountability is terrible. There's one thing I learned in the private sector. Mm-hmm. You raise your hand when you're right, and you point the finger to somebody else. When they say, "Hey, what should we be doing differently?"
Right.
You bring your team in and you figure out what's best for your company. Phil Murphy should be figuring out what's best for the state, and he doesn't. I think he's all about trying to deflect
what's
blame.
Best for him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think he might have his eyes on a bigger prize some day down the road.
Yeah, I just look. He's not paying attention to the crisis that's affecting this state, and I think the fact that he lacks crisis management skills, and quite honestly, I think the Democrat congressional leadership in this state lack a spine. They lack a backbone to sit down with him and say, "What are you doing here?" or to fight or to battle with him, because the job of a congressman is to basically bring back that which is in the best interest of the district he manages.
Right.
And we've got, Ronnie, and you know this, we talked about it, a lot of small businesses in District 5. Every single day, 5, 8, 10, 15 go out of business, never to come back again.
Right.
There are 19,000 small businesses in our district. We'll lose a third of them. Of them, and it's up to these congressmen to sit down with the governor, because they're all the same party, knock on his door and say, Phil, what's going on? Right. Let's either figure out how to open up SMART. Let's figure out how to put people to work. Let's figure out how to get aid where it's needed.
Right.
That's where people start to work together, and that's not happening. So the prize they have, the prize they have their eye on, I think, has nothing to do with the people in the district and everything to do with their personal ambitions.
Yeah. I mean, I think every Democratic governor of Jersey always thinks that they can become president one day, and we saw how that worked out for Jim McGreevey. Mm-hmm. We saw how that worked out for Corzine, right? So, and I think for Phil Murphy, it might be the same way.
Yeah, look, as Jack says when he's out on the trail, it's in 40 some odd years. We've never had a Democrat governor reelected,
right?
And I think that speaks to who
why
New
is
Jerseyans,
that, right?
who New Jerseyans really are.
Yeah.
They'll give you a chance. And
but if you screw up,
you don't,
you're gone.
Right, that's exactly right. And Phil, I think, is leading the classroom in screwing up.
But I find it funny that now that Biden has been put into office, there's all these states saying that we need to get businesses started, like in New York State.
Right.
I believe Murphy's probably going to say the same thing soon.
Sure.
Like all the restaurants and stuff, they have to open, blah blah blah. So that leads me to think that this whole shutdown wasn't about health and it wasn't about the people.
It was about politics.
It was about politics.
That's exactly right.
And that's very sad.
Yeah, look, it is, because when you take a look at where you're starting to see the increase in infection rates and things like that, they're in states where they have very strict masking requirements. They're not picking up to the same degree they are in the states where they don't.
Right.
So, that's my point about crisis management. You can put everybody in a hazmat suit.
Right.
You can shut down the entire state worse than it is now, and maybe it goes away. Okay, if that's the case, what have you done? What are the second and third effects of that? And right now, we already know that the health effects beyond the pandemic, beyond COVID-19, are devastating.
Right.
The loneliness people are
psychological problems too. Right? There's a lot of people who commit suicide because they've just been stuck at home all day, or people that gain weight, kind of like me, right? Like can't work out or go to the gym.
Right.
But to be fair, I wasn't going to the gym prior to the COVID anyway. But but this gives me a good excuse.
Yeah, no, I agree. But that's Ronnie, a good point that a true crisis manager sits back with his team and looks at all the follow-on effects of any decision that's made, and he seems to be singularly focused on how do we defeat this virus, which I think is noble. But you can defeat the virus, or you can endeavor to defeat the virus more surgically than he's doing it.
Right.
He's just basically throwing water everywhere instead of being forensic.
Saying, you don't need to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? And that's what they're doing.
Now, look, that's what he's doing, and it's also part of
political scheme, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at states like Florida and Texas, where they haven't had these economic, shutdowns, the COVID rate in those states are, I think, a lot less than here.
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
So, I mean,
and look, here's another thing, and I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but and this is not a conspiracy theory.
Right.
This is a fact. What Phil Murphy did, and what our Democrat congressional leadership didn't call him out on, were these issues with the elder care facilities and the veteran facilities. Some ridiculously high percentage of our elderly were, I don't even say died. They were killed.
Right.
By people who were sent back to those facilities under Phil Murphy's Executive Order 103.
Irresponsible.
Completely irresponsible. Right. And when you started to see the numbers come up, he didn't reverse himself. He didn't stop. He didn't say, hey, wait a minute. New Jersey's good about people who say, you know what, my bad. Let's try and fix this together. He wouldn't do that. He didn't do that. And that's a problem. And congressional leadership not calling him out on it is just... it almost looks like they're in cahoots.
The congressional leadership is all Democrats, right?
No,
so
that's
it's
exactly
like,
right.
it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
So when you have, in New Jersey, we pretty much have a one-party system.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, our legislators at the state level, we're at the wrong end of a supermajority.
Right.
But people like Holly and Kristen Corrado and Joe Panaccio and our senators in Assembly. They're fighting every day, and
it's pretty much up to them to do the work that the congressional leadership won't do.
But they're literally banging their heads against the wall because whatever is brought up that makes any sense, the other side looks at it and says, "Sorry, we've got the supermajority. Go pound sand." And I will tell you, in a lot of cases, they've taken some legislation or some ideas that were written by Republicans, tweaked it here or there, and miraculously it comes out as a Democrat idea. So, look, as Jack said on the campaign trail, we're not going to cry in our soup here. Right. We've got to get back to work. We have to roll up our sleeves and figure out how to take this state back, one district at a time, one town at a time, and hopefully we take it back in Trenton. And then in 2022, we didn't get any seats turned in New Jersey.
Right.
New York turned seats. California turned seats. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to turn any seats, but that's what Phil Murphy did. When Phil Murphy went mandatory vote by mail, he was smart enough with the people around him to say, there's an advantage to the Democrat Party if we go all vote by mail just based on the number of registration.
Right.
Then you tweak here or there some of the other things that happen around the state, and that's the formula for, I don't want to say stealing an election, that's the formula for tilting the odds through nefarious forms into your own favor, and that's what he did.
But now that the Democrats have done this and done it pretty well, right? Do you think there's any hope for the GOP to win any more races in the future? I mean, unless this whole system gets cleaned up. I mean, because they've kind of perfected the art of winning an election, right?
Right.
And with no pushback, they're only going to, expand on this whole scheme.
Yeah.
So what can Republicans do in the future to kind of curb this, especially in a state like Jersey where it's all Democrats? I mean, we're kind of powerless to kind of change the system, right?
We are.
Unless, we have a governor like Jack who can on day one say, all right, let's end this mail-in voting, or let's, try to fix it, right?
Well, let's try. Look, the mail-in voting, I think, is an okay idea.
Right, like,
mandatory vote by
right.
mail is the problem.
Right.
When you tell people they can't come to the polls unless they vote provisionally, and then there's no transparency around how that's done and why that's done. So whenever you create confusion, you're always going to create a drop in attendance.
Right.
And that's what happened. But to your point about can the state win? I think New Jerseyans, I think Americans are smart enough to know when someone's trying to pull the wool over their eyes.
Right.
I've been out there saying, and I said this to Josh, when there was this, hey, you don't wear a mask. I said, look, I wear a mask. I just don't pull it up over my eyes like you guys do.
Right.
And that's true. And look, I'm older than you, but I remember coming out of Nixon and Ford and Watergate, and the country was like, hey, you know what? We need a change of pace. And
Right.
they brought in the peanut farmer. And Jimmy Carter, a good man,
Right, yeah.
he wasn't the right man for the job at the time. We saw inflation pick up. We saw our status in the country pull
Right.
back a little bit from a military standpoint. And 4 years later, people said, no. There was a period of time where I thought we would, after Watergate, we'd never have a Republican in office again.
Right.
And 4 years later, we found 4 years after Jimmy Carter, we found Ronald Reagan.
My
so ebbs and
namesake,
flows.
by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was
How
named
about
after
that?
Reagan. Yeah, because my parents came from Taiwan to this country in 1980.
Okay.
And I was born in 81, and my mom and my dad were.
You were born in 81?
Yeah.
I think I have shoes older than you.
Oh, really? So my parents were trying to figure out what to name me, and my grandmother was like, "Well, you're in the U.S. now. The president is Ronald Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
Why not name your son after the president?" So that's what they did.
Wow.
And actually, when my son was born last year, I followed that same path, and I named my son Donald.
Oh, did you
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we got Ronald and Donald. I mean, if I had my kid in 2012, I may have to name him Barack, right?
Yeah, all right.
But it's a good thing that it didn't happen then, right? Right? If I had him in 2012, it would be like Ronald and then Barack.
Yeah, I think.
How'd that work out?
Yeah, the kid would have a tough time in
Yeah.
school, I think.
But yeah, so I love Ronald Reagan. He's my namesake,
Yeah.
and I think Donald Trump is the only other president that rivals Reagan in terms of his popularity and in terms of his vision for
Yeah.
like this country, right?
Look, he did.
I mean, Bush was good, but I mean, he's no Trump, right?
Well, look, I think a president's legacy is cemented in the years following his election, not
Right.
in the months following his leaving office. And we'll see. I certainly liked his policies.
Right.
Being a private sector guy,
Right.
I like what he did early on in terms of taking the handcuffs off our economy from a regulation standpoint, but not overdoing it.
Right.
And that, in my opinion, that was the single biggest factor that led to unprecedented GDP growth over the 2.5 to 3 years, the first 3 years of his presidency.
Right.
I like what he did from a foreign policy standpoint. You didn't see missiles coming over here. You didn't see threats from North Korea.
Right.
When he stepped foot into North Korea, my father served in the Korean War. My father called me up and said, I never thought I would see an American president
Right.
step over that DMZ line and shake hands with a North Korean leader. I think that's a big deal. What he did for the Jewish community.
Yeah.
The
Jerusalem.
right, with the exactly. What he's also done with helping or aiding in striking these peace accords
Right.
with countries we never thought would come to the table. And finally, what he was doing from a trade standpoint with China and other countries, people haven't given him enough credit.
Right.
When he said America first, it wasn't just a word. He basically said America first, made in America, worked in America, from America.
Right.
And he did it, and he fulfilled that. It's just a look. I'm not the. I
Yeah.
think a lot of the president's issues were about his messaging and not his message.
Right.
And that's where
like a lot of it too was the fact that he had the entire media,
against him.
team or the whole media complex going against him.
Sure.
And when you have $1 billion media team going against you, and in charge of the messaging for the
Sure.
DNC, it's kind of hard to sway people, right?
Yeah.
So
Especially when what they're concentrating on every day is pandemic,
Right.
pandemic, Trump bad, Trump bad,
right.
Trump bad.
And like you just said, right, he had a lot of peace deals in the Middle East, but when those happened, the media didn't cover it.
Of course not.
Right. So
Of
I
course
mean,
not.
so poor Trump.
Look, we're the Republican Party in this state. Certainly in the country, we're seeing it. But in this state, we're the redheaded stepchild party.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, but you look to the goodwill of the people to pick their leaders based on a lot of different things, and not necessarily what the press is coming out there with. There is one thing that I think the president did really well with the media. He exposed a bias.
Right. He exposed them for what they were.
Yeah. So
like
people have been smart enough, right? And they've been smart enough to figure out, maybe not to a large enough degree. You don't believe what you hear on television.
Right.
Do some homework. The internet is both good and bad. The good part of it is if you know how to do your homework on what you've seen or heard, you can draw your own conclusions. And I think ultimately that's what we are going to see, Ron.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of parties, though, so there was a report out, or there were multiple sources out that said that Trump was in talks with his, with his people about potentially starting a third party, the Patriot Party.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think he's actually serious, or do you think he's just kind of just saying that to kind of warn Mitch McConnell and all the other people in Congress to not impeach him, or to not vote to convict?
I don't know. Private sector executives are always thinking of multiple paths to everything.
I personally think that he kind of put out that statement that he's thinking about creating a third party to kind of put a lid on the GOP from trying to challenge him, because then they'll be like, okay, well, if he creates a third party, then everyone's screwed, right? Because then Democrats will definitely win, because a third party will splinter the GOP vote.
No, absolutely. The math, right? Look, if somebody leaves a party and forms a third party, they're going to split the party from whence they left. But look, like I said, any executive or past executive or current executive that makes a decision like that, they're going to do it based on a variety of things. Right. Did I not turn my phone off?
Well, I mean, you're a popular guy, so I would expect the phone to go off.
Right. You float lots of different ideas out there. Some of them are to throw people off. Some of them are to float ideas out there. Others are real. Right. And I don't know what the answer is on this, but he loves this party. He loves this country. Ultimately, he will make a decision. Yeah. And as far as the impeachment vote, you still need 2/3 from the Senate.
You need two-thirds. And I read that, so we have Mitt Romney and Murkowski and Sassy and a bunch of guys that will probably vote for it because that's what they do, right? They're just haters, right? So I think I read that the Republicans need 16 senators to defect. Right. And with those 4 senators, they need like 12. So do you think there are 12 senators out there that would do this?
Look, I think so. I may be wrong. Right. I think there are Democrat senators that may not go with it. This is over. He's out of the office. Right. There's one thing both parties need to understand. The twisting the knife in the back of your opponent after he's down. We like and hate a lot of things in this country. We hate bullies. Yeah. And if somebody's down and the party continues to jump on him and twist it,
like you kick him while he's down. It's not cool.
That's just it's not a cool thing.
Just on a like a human level kind of thing, right? You don't do that.
And this is pure. Look, he's already out of office. Right. So the motives for doing this, if you're the Democrat Party,
well, they want to do it because they want to prevent him from running again. And I think that also shows.
I don't know if that would prevent him from running again. Well, I don't think he will. Right. But I think
you don't think so?
I don't know. The 4 years is a long time,
4 years is a long time.
But the thought
4
is
months is a long time in politics, right?
No, tell me about it. But I do think. It's time to move on. It's time to turn the page. The Democrat Party needs to understand Nancy Pelosi is doing this to destroy the man's legacy. Right. She's not doing this for any strategic reasons. This is personal. Right. And, it's personal for Chuck Schumer. It's personal for all these people that are basically taking a man who lost an election, left the office, looked them in the eye for 4 years and said, I'm going to do for the American people and I don't care what you say. Right. And he did it. He will be known in my eyes and I don't look greatest notwithstanding. We'll wait. Time will tell. Right. He kept nearly every single promise.
Well, the greatest president might be sitting here, right?
Are you running for president?
No, you are.
No, I give anybody running for office who wins credit when they start doing what they said they would do on the campaign trail. Because too many politicians tell you A, B, and C, and they get into office, and you get 1,000 excuses why they can't do it. President Trump said, nope. Right. So, like I said, I liked his foreign policy moves. I like what he did to
promises made and promises kept, right? Yeah. Oh, speaking about the third party thing, so here in New Jersey, in terms of the governor's race, right, there's been some talk about other people joining the race under the Patriot Party, right? I believe there's one candidate by the name of David Winkler.
Yeah, I saw he jump in today as the candidate for the Patriot Party?
Well, I actually interviewed him for my show
Okay.
like a few weeks ago, and at the time he was running for state senator.
Right.
And literally after the interview, the next day he announced that he was running for governor. I was like, oh damn! Now I got to change my whole show.
You impressed him enough
Yeah,
to say that he should be
Right.
running for governor.
Yeah, so now he's running for governor, but he was registered as a Republican. But I think yesterday or the day before, he mentioned that he's going to be running on the Patriot Party line.
Right.
Do you think that ultimately hurts us?
The party?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it hurts us.
Would hurt
I
Jack?
don't think.
Do you
No,
think
it won't hurt Jack.
You don't
Jack,
think it would, split the vote?
he'll take votes.
Right.
Look, I'm not an election prognosticator, but I think, just laying out the numbers, laying out the stats. It feels to me like Jack will be the nominee.
Right.
Jack has got support. He's been out there a long time. He's got solutions that are very consistent at a top level with the problems we have in our state, and he has a resume consistent with coming up with solutions that he can solve. He's known for surrounding himself with the right people,
Right.
which we know this president or this governor doesn't do. So, do I look? I think there's 4 people in the race. Are the other 3 going to pull from Jack? Yes.
Who are the 4? Is Jack? Is Jack? Was Murphy? Or are you talking about the?
I've heard a couple other names out there that
Right.
up and down the state.
Right.
But Jack. Every time you turn around, Jack's got line after line
Right,
after
yeah.
line. Rulo, I think, is somebody who's thrown their.
And I think Hirsch Singh, right?
Hirsch Singh is the. I'm sorry, Hirsch is the other person that's in.
So I think that's 3 so far, right?
Yeah, I think it's 3 plus Jack. But in any event, look in our primary race, and not that I was a shoo-in, I wasn't. We worked, and I always work like you're in last place. But you start to see when you get out there and you start to look at polls where people line up.
The primary is when, actually? It's in June, right?
I believe the primary is in June. The lines are awarded in March. The primary is in June.
I believe there are 2 counties that have given their lines to Jack already.
Yeah.
Right?
This is something I think New Jersey has to think smarter about.
Right.
And that is, if your primary race ends in June, and it takes another month to kind of gear up again,
You only
you've
really
got
have
a
like 4 months to kind of campaign. But now
exactly.
Jack has pretty much like 10 months.
Yeah.
To get his word out, to make himself known to the people. So
and
I think it really helps
that's
him.
a big deal.
Right.
I think that's a big deal. And look, some of the party leaders in some of the counties around are recognizing if you're going to beat a machine, you got to start to think differently.
Right.
And the line process does make sense to some degree, but how you win is
Can you
coalescing.
explain that line process to the viewers who might not know what that means?
Well, in a primary election, you've got like parties, you got individuals from like parties that you have the opportunity to vote for. One of those candidates at the time of the primary will have the county line.
Okay.
In other words, it's quite literally the physical line when you come down in the voting booth and you vote for A, B, C, D, and E candidate.
That means that the candidate that has the county line will show up first, or
they'll show up in a line. They won't necessarily show up first, but they'll show up in a line with the other candidates. For example, when in our race, in our primary race, I didn't have the line in one of the counties. So if you looked at some of the other counties that don't necessarily have lines, but they have something called slogans, people will gravitate toward the slogan that they're either most familiar with or the slogan that best represents what they've traditionally known to be the winning party or the party in that district. In Bergen County, for example, it was the Republican line.
Okay.
So my job as a candidate when I did not have the line was to convince people, hey, Donald Trump's in one, in the first slot.
Right.
I'm not below Donald Trump. I'm off to the right. If you like what I have to say, remember, you need to move to the right. So the line does have value.
So who had the line?
John McCain had the line.
Oh, really? Okay.
And that was because, we didn't have a county convention at the time. Right. So they had their own reasons why they picked the line. John obviously has been someone.
So he had his line, and then your name was just next to his name? Or
my name was. I think they had 5 people, believe it or not, running in the race. Hector Castillo was in the race. Jim Baldini was in the race. A few others were in it. But as a voter, you're supposed to do, in my opinion, your homework on a horizontal basis, not on a vertical basis. There are people that will come in and say, straight down the line Republican. Even though everybody's a Republican, they'll look at President Trump and come right down the line.
Gotcha.
My view is you go horizontal. You say, okay, who do I like in Senate?
Right.
Who do I like for president? Obviously, Trump was the only person that had the line. Right. And who do I like for Congress? Who do I like for freeholders? And it was our job and the job of our group, and we did a really good job at telling people what we represented and who we are, and getting our name out there enough, Ron, so that when they came down the line, they said, well, I want President Trump. Right. I want such and such for Senate. And you know what? I like what Frank Pallotta has to say, so let me move over from column C to column E
right.
and vote Frank Pallotta, and then come back and finish the way. Wow. That's what you're supposed to do as a voter,
so
and that's why
this makes the fact that you got the nomination even that big of a feat, because you didn't have the line and you still got it.
Yeah,
so that's
it was
awesome.
and we won by 20 points.
Right.
I think there were a lot of people that thought we didn't have the line. Mm-hmm. We might not win. If you win, you might not win.
You had the line in like Sussex County and Warren County.
In the other three, we did.
Right.
We had effectively the
right.
line. We had the endorsement of leadership
right.
in those counties. But look, I was out there before
right.
any of the other candidates. Mm-hmm.
But Bergen is the largest county out of those four, right?
Yes,
right.
Bergen County in the primary. Bergen County represents 52% of the votes.
52%, wow.
In the general, it represents 72%. Wow. So when you throw both parties,
so despite not having a line in the biggest county, you still won the primary
by 19 points.
Kudos.
Yeah, that's it's it's the team, because it's not just getting out there,
right.
Ron. It's making sure your messaging is accurate. It's making sure that Kelly and the team that she puts
right.
in place are doing the surgical analysis around the state,
work,
right, to make sure when is a visit important, when is a mailer important, when is a Zoom call important,
right.
and we did that, and I think we did it real well. We surprised Washington.
Okay. A few more questions and then we're done, because
sure.
I know that we're probably hungry. It's time for lunch, right? What are your thoughts on the Capitol rioting? Do you think the president actually did anything to make it happen, to incite it, or
no? I don't. Look, I honestly don't think he is. They throw around the words insurrection.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at his speech, he said, "Go ahead and march and protest peacefully and patriotically."
Yeah.
How was that inciting anything?
It's inciting. Look, I think
right.
Giuliani should have probably had a better choice of words when he came out. That became the headline.
Right.
What I do think could have been done by the leadership, and again, the man has 1,000 things on his mind.
Right.
Well, while it was happening, maybe something. Although I will tell you, the charging of the Capitol started to happen before he said those words.
Right. I mean, he was actually still giving his speech.
Yeah.
Right?
When that started to happen. So for whatever reason, look, I certainly don't condone it.
Right. I don't think anyone does, right? I mean,
no, it
doesn't. Not going to get anyone who says, "Oh, that was a great riot."
Yeah.
No one's going to say that, right?
It's violative.
Right.
A lot of the moves were illegal. And look, I got to tell you, and I'm not pointing fingers one way or another.
The thing that kills me is that, okay, so whether or not Trump voters were a part of this, okay, there were some that were part of the rioting, right? But I mean, it kind of pales in comparison to what was happening all throughout the summer in terms of BLM and Antifa. But yeah, this is what the media focuses on.
Well, look, that's accurate, and
right.
and look, it's they will choose to put up what they want to put up.
Mm-hmm.
I completely condone what happened, just like on multiple posts and interviews.
Me too, by the way.
I condone what happened,
right.
In Portland with more than 120 days of straight rioting. I've said this. It is our right to raise our voice in peaceful protest.
Right.
It is. And even a lot of those riots that we've seen, there were pockets of those riots. In some case, most of those riots, there were peaceful protests going on.
Right.
There's always a faction within any group.
Small group that kind of ruins it for everybody.
Right. But I mean, that's what gets the clicks. That's what
right.
gets the views. And that's why it comes out there. Unfortunately, I think the management of those clicks and views by the liberal media is probably where you get a skew.
Okay, so now after all that's said and done,
mm-hmm.
how does New Jersey go forward? I was actually thinking, if you don't count the presidential race,
mm-hmm.
the Republicans actually did very well this time.
Yeah,
we did not lose any House seats.
Right.
We actually gained seats.
Mm-hmm.
The Democrats lost seats, right? They lost a lot of seats
in the country.
Yeah.
We picked up, I think, 12 or 13 seats.
So I mean, if you take out the presidential race,
right,
everything was actually great, right?
Yeah, look, it was, and I will tell you, even in my district, we won a lot of really good municipal races. We flipped a lot of towns that were Democrat strongholds, and those towns are still, in some cases, 8, 10, 12, 15% more Democrats and Republicans, but we have entire Republican councils now. We have Republican mayors where we never had mayors. So I think in New Jersey, I think that proves people are moving away from just strict party votes and saying who's the best person for my town on this day. And I think that's going to continue. I think we need to do a little more work at messaging who and what the Republican Party really is. Right. And hopefully that's what we'll do. I think Jack is running a great race, and we'll see if we can roll Jack. We also have every legislator seat up in this state. Right. You've got every Senate and every Assembly seat that's up. So we'll
some
see.
County seats too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually thinking about this, like how to secure the voting process, and I was thinking that this may be completely wrong and dumb, but I was thinking that why don't we use the National Guard? Why don't we have the National Guard go to each house or each each residential area and pick up the actual ballots once you voted? I mean, we saw that this time because of the swearing in of Joe Biden, there were 20,000 some National Guards,
25,000 National Guards,
that were called to the
10,000.
Capitol
Yep.
to kind of just protect. So I mean, why don't we use the National Guard to ensure or to protect our voting rights and have them pick up the ballots
from individual homes?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
that'll be tough. I think it's a multi-step process. Right. First thing you have to do, and nobody disagrees with this except those in the Democrat Party who understand the numbers. Right. You got to clean up the voter rolls. Period. End of conversation. That has to be done, and that's easy to do.
Right. I think you said it's super simple, right? You take the the Social Security number of the people that have died,
and you match it against us, and you just delete them. Right. People who haven't voted for a long time, they shouldn't automatically get it. I don't think there should be everyone getting a ballot. Right. Ever. You should ask for a vote by mail, and you should get it. Even through this pandemic, I think people still should have been able to ask. But that aside, we're one of the greatest nations in terms of technology as well.
We've gone to the moon. We're going to the Mars, right? Why can't we figure this out?
And we've got drop boxes. So, look, we've got to get used to the fact that there's a. It's important. It's critical to know that our voting is protected and there's integrity around the voting. But the other thing we have to do, in addition to cleaning up voter rolls, Republicans have to get out there and register. We need a voter registration drive that takes those Republicans who believe in those strong conservative Republican values, principled values, and register. And voting according to how they believe. So those are the things we need to do. And then we have to make sure that we slowly and comfortably, like Florida, introduce a multi-day voting process, early voting. I think early voting is smart based on the population continuing to grow and the number of polling stations are static. So the math around that makes sense. And we've got to make sure we get our hands around voting by mail the right way.
Currently in New Jersey, is there early voting process? No, right?
No.
So you have to, if you want to vote in person, you have to go on that particular
day.
Right.
So I think it needs to be, and look, Jack, and this is where I like Jack. Jack doesn't make decisions like this based on party. Right. Jack makes decisions on how to clean up the voter rolls and how to vote by mail.
Really, right?
Common sense, sensitive to how the population is growing, how the population is aging, where they live. We need to make sure that we apply the brains that we have, the technology that we have, the people power and the skills that we have to figure out how to protect the integrity of an election. That's really what matters. Right. You don't have this started back in the Hanging Chad in 2000.
And it's been 20
when
years.
You were a baby.
No, well, I mean, 2000. I was in college. I'm not that young.
But look, that's important. People need to walk away from any election, and they walked away from the Trump election. I don't think there was a Democrat that thought it was stolen. I think there was this Russian collusion thing was something that was.
I don't think there is a Democrat who actually thinks that Biden actually won. I mean, they're probably all like, "Oh my gosh, he actually pulled it off."
Yeah, but look, we need to get behind the current president. Irrespective of party, because the Republicans, I think, understand that the country is bigger than the party.
But that's the irony in this whole thing, right? I mean, when Trump won 4 years ago, Democrats weren't coming together. They were condemning him, and they were still fighting him up until a few days ago, and still fighting him. As Republicans, we're supposed to just come together and forget the events of the past like 4 or 5 years, right?
Yeah, and people have realized this Russian collusion, clearly that wasn't the case.
Right.
Clearly.
The
rank and file, the country didn't believe that was the case. It was pushed by a small faction within the Democrat Party.
Now, of course, the Democrats and the left, they care about evidence so much, right? They're like, where's the evidence? But where was the evidence during the Russian collusion hoax?
Right, and that's what I think you need to teach the voters.
They selectively care about evidence.
Right.
Okay, so, Frank, what do you say to New Jersey voters, or to just a voter in general, who might be dejected and feeling down about the whole political process, who may not want to vote in the future? What do you say to them to kind of get their spirits up and to get them, still engaged?
Look, there's we've seen cycles. Look, I've seen cycles since the mid '70s. We fought 250 some odd, 60 some odd years ago. For a lot of things. One of the things we fought for was our right to vote. Mm-hmm. And it's not technically a right in terms of an amendment, but what separates us from a lot of the places in the world is our ability to create a peaceful transfer of power after a transparent and open election. I think it's up to the people, the voters, who are clearly dejected, and I think they're dejected on both sides.
Right.
The people that you said really didn't believe that Biden won. Look, if they're happy that they got Trump out or happy that their party's in,
are thrilled, right? They have no reason to be sad,
right? But I still think behind closed doors, both parties and unaffiliates are sitting there going, "This was ugly, not right or wrong, not false, not corrupt. This didn't happen as clean as it should have." I think you look to our leaders to create transparency and honesty around the voting process. And then, look, like I said, Ronald Reagan won by a huge margin, and then, that rolled into HW. And I think there were people that thought when
HW lost only because there was a third-party candidate.
No, that's exactly right. But the point being is, when HW got in, I remember talking to Democrat friends who thought there would never be a Democrat president again. And then we rolled into Clinton.
Right.
Clinton was the right guy at the right time. Barack Obama, right guy, right time to sort of change the tide. So I would tell the voters, keep your head down, do your homework. Society changes, people change, the world, the environment, globally things change.
Right.
You make your decision of who you're going to vote for. You should be making a decision based on what is best for you and based on the country you love.
Right.
And we'll see where it goes. I pray for integrity around the process, and we look to our elected leaders to make sure that there is integrity. So, look, I've got hope. I've spent 50 some odd years in this country, and it still works.
Okay. 2 more questions and then we're done. I promise.
Trust me, I've got some time, Ron.
Okay. Okay, do you think Trump will run again in 2024? And if not, who do you think will come out and kind of take that mantle?
Oh, God, it's way early. I mean, I don't think anybody thought after Election Day in Barack's second term that Donald Trump would be the guy. You never know who's going to come in. Very early in the campaign, a year ago, Biden wasn't even on the Richter scale.
I mean, he almost got killed off before the South Carolina primary.
Yeah. So it's you marry who you are and your message with the opportunity at the time. Right. So look, I don't know. I don't think he'll run again, and that's just my gut feel.
Given his personality, the fact that he hates to lose, that he wants to kind of get back that image as a winner.
Well, he did win. He won in 16 when no one thought he would.
Right.
So he will forever be the 45th president of the United States. So when everyone said he wouldn't get in, when you look at all those talk shows early on when he came down the escalator, there's no way. He already won.
Right, but I know in his mind he wants to be a 2-term president.
That
one term is kind of like a Spain.
Right, and that's Ron. That's what makes him successful is he doesn't roll over.
Right.
But success isn't necessarily defined in politics by winning an office. Success is defined by the number of people you sway to help the people that you were elected, that the people who elected you. And that could happen, and you saw it with Jimmy Carter, you saw it with H.W., you saw it with George Bush, and you're even seeing it now. I haven't seen Barack Obama come out, but Jimmy was building houses, and the Clinton Global Initiative. People had their views as to where the money went, but you make your mark in life, what you do over the course of your lifetime. And I think Donald Trump has enough people behind. Look, I'm thrilled to death that 200,000 people voted for me. He had 70 some odd million vote for him.
Right.
So he's got power to sway. He's got the power to lead. He's got the power to influence. I think how he uses that over the course of the next few years, in my opinion, will define his legacy.
Right. Okay. So, Frank, one last question.
Yes.
What does the future hold for you? Do you plan on running again?
Lunch today with you.
Lunch, okay.
Look,
and any plans to run? I'm just going to ask it. Are you going to run again?
It's too early to make a decision. I liked being out there. I like the message. I think parts of our state are broken. I think our district today has a congressman who doesn't have the district in his best interest. I honestly believe that. If I didn't think that were the case, I wouldn't have run in the first place. Because it's tough to sway people when they think that congressman or that senator or that governor is doing a great job. So that's one of the reasons you step in. As I had mentioned early on in the interview, D.C. has reached out to me and said, "We love the race you ran." And I said, "Geez, I lost by 7 points." They said, "Do you know who you ran against? You came from nowhere. We didn't know you in Washington, D.C. in July."
He was nicknamed the
human fundraising machine.
So,
but look, we've won races. Christie won a race where he was outraised almost 4-1. So it's not necessarily about the money. It's about, we talked about this. It's about the message, and it's about the messenger more than it's about the money. So I'm going to sit down. I'm going to make my decision with my family. I'm going to talk to my campaign manager because at the end of the day, she helps create the path on where we go. I'm passionate about making sure that the people in my district are getting what they should be getting. And if I don't think that they're getting it, if I think they're being left behind, me or someone that I stand behind will jump into this race and make sure that we get our message out.
Okay. And this reminds me about something that you said before. You said that, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, right man, right time, right? In the case of you, I think you're the right man at any time when it comes to this district.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that.
So I hope that you actually do jump in. And if and when you do, I'll be right there, right behind you and helping you out and any way I can.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the time that you give me, and I appreciate you following the race. I think we put up a really, really good fight. And
like I said, in the midst of a pandemic, to come within 7 points of a juggernaut campaigner is a huge feat.
Well, also, and we'll end it with, Nancy Pelosi threw a ton of money in his race. The state threw a ton of money in his race.
And why would they do that? They did that because they were worried.
They were worried. And look, the other thing with him, he was sitting on $8 million at the time, and he was on Facebook begging people to throw them $5 and $10. I funded most of the race myself, and a good chunk of the race from people that are local. I think Josh, more than 80% of Josh's money came from outside the state, outside his district. More than 70% came from outside the state. So the true definition of who you represent, follow the money. So that's what we'll do.
All right, Frank. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much, Ron. I appreciate it.
We hope to speak again.
Absolutely.
Very soon. Okay, guys. Thanks for watching. And your campaign site is still up, right? Or do you have a site that people
it's
can
still
go
up.
to?
I've just been too tired to take it down. Facebook page is up. The campaign site is up. If you have a question, hit our website.
If you want to contact Frank or learn more about Frank, you can always go to his Facebook page, Frank Pallotta, right?
Yeah. PallottaForCongress.com.
Or Pallotta for Congress. And, you can always find my page at Real Talk with Ronnie on Facebook. And that's it for today. So thanks,
Appreciate
Frank.
It. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thanks, guys, for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.